Okay, I just thought I should read Sarah J. Maas' A Court of Thorn and Roses. Why did I think that? I'm not sure. Now the reasons seem kind of blurry. Hey guys, so this is editing memo as usual. I'm just editing this video and I realized that basically it's a string of really impromptu, like candid and natural videos of me just basically giving my opinion about A Court of Thorns and Roses as I read it. So it might seem a little disconnected considering it's not really done in one shot, and also you're gonna see me at my worst without makeup on and just like in generally really crappy clothes all the times. Also, I am going to be showing you guys a fan art that I also drew because in theory I am an artist and this should be an art related YouTube channel. So what you're gonna see me drawing whilst I talk about this book is a supposed fan art of Feyre, even though it isn't really a fan art because I deeply despise Feyre as a character. I really can't stand the girl. This is not really Feyre, it's more just like a cool archer character that I am drawing whilst talking shit about Feyre. So if you want to see more content from me where I draw characters or illustrations and talk about books or talk about art or talk about social media or whatever comes into my head, please go ahead and subscribe and like this video. So let the show begin. I read and watched so many controversial reviews of these books and just generally bad opinions about these books. But then some people also told me, well, yeah, it's trashy, but it's also good fun. So I was like, yeah, I'll see for myself. I didn't want to read them and potentially draw fan art for them because of two reasons mostly. So primarily because I don't really want to give any more publicity to a book if it's a bad book, and also because some people may think, oh, she's only doing it because it's an easy sort of like clickbaity kind of content. And you'd be right. I mean, it's probably 50% of the reason why I am reading them. But I don't know if it's worth it. I mean, I don't know if the easy content that I can make out of this is worth it. To the point that I'm not even actually setting up my camera to make this video. I'm just literally on my sofa. And so I thought for this video I would do something a little different. I'm gonna just take videos of me whenever I'm reading and I feel like there's something that I should note about this book that really like doesn't make any sense to me. I'm about 20% in of A Court of Thorn and Roses, chapter 9. I'm reading the ebook on my iPad, so I don't really know actually what page that is in, you know, printed book pages, page number. Yeah. What's going on? Like, this is supposed to be like a guilty pleasure, kind of like fantasy, but for now, I'm feeling very guilty about it, but there's no pleasure. It's been very painful actually, this 20% of the book. Let's start from the first thing that doesn't make sense. And like this is the one main reason why I'm not enjoying this book. In fantasy books, there is really one rule that you have to follow. That is that if you create a fantastic world and you do some world building, then you should stick to your own rules. Like you create some rules, just stick to them. You can have anything you want as long as you're consistent with what you've done before. In this world, there was all this mythology where the Fae, the fairy people that lived in the world, were like masters of the humans and enslaved the humans. And then there was a massive war apparently where all the human slaves rebelled, and so after, you know, centuries of war, finally the Fae sort of agreed to a treaty not to enslave the humans anymore. And so the Fae took the northern hemisphere and like the humans took the southern hemisphere or something. Basically, they just divided the world like up. So one part of the world is where the Fae still lives and it's like it's magical and it's always summer or whatever, and it's like it's beautiful. And then there's another part of the world where humans live. and it's shit. Humans are really poor and like go hungry every winter because that's what happens in winter apparently. And I've got so many questions already because the lore of this thing is just not fleshed out well at all. Why did the Fae concede it? Because from what we are shown of the Fae, like they're super strong, almost like impossible to kill. They have superpowers, like they have magic, but for some reason they at some point decided to actually give up control of the humans. And it's like, why would they do that? Feyre, the main character, in her inner monologue, because she's telling the story in first person narration, she tells us in the first few chapters, like over and over, how if the Fae wanted to come over the wall and kill them all, they could. So I'm like, why don't they? So that's the first thing that like I really don't understand. Second thing that again makes me really question Sarah J. Maas' ability to stick to her own rules is that the main character is called Feyre. She literally tells us how to pronounce her name, Feyre, like the. Feyre obviously sounds like fairy and like fae in a world where for like 400 or 500 years, humans have been scared shitless of the Fae. You don't want to call your little newborn Feyre if the thing that you hate and are scared of the most in the world is a fairy. That doesn't make any sense. This is like a retelling of Beauty and the Beast or the Bluebeard story where a human girl does something stupid like plucking a rose, or in this case killing a fairy who's also a wolf, whatever, gets trapped into a magical contract that she wasn't aware of, and therefore has to live out her days, or, you know, a year and a day or whatever, into a magical realm where there's a beast or scary monster type of captor, but then she gets Stockholm Syndrome and she falls in love with them. Even though, as I was saying, loads of things don't make sense in terms of the actual magical constraints. So she kills this wolf who's a fairy. Are they furries or something? I don't know. It feels like they are. Like they're basically furries with golden masks on that they can't get off because... And that's like the Beauty and the Beast Disney movie where a few hundred years ago magic started being weird, and so they now have these masks stuck on their face, which is the Sarah J. Maas equivalent of all their servants having been turned into house appliances. There are these like furry fairies, really feral, and that's highlighted by the fact that they don't call themselves men or women, but female or males, which is something that I find really icky, and every time that I hear it, I get like a physical sense of like gagging. At some point, Lucien tells Tamlin that his ability to talk to females has gone a bit rusty in the last 100 years or so, and it's like, oh, to talk to females, really? We're supposed to like root for Feyre, I assume, but I just don't, because I find her really annoying. So she's being caught killing this fairy. Then she is brought into this magical realm where she can eat every day, she can sleep in a nice bed, she can have nice things, she can basically just, you know, do the thing that she wants to do, apparently, which is paint. I'm an artist, and if someone told me you can live in this magical kingdom where you don't have to do anything, you don't have to work, you can just eat your fill whenever you want, wear pretty clothes, and get some painting supplies, and you can just paint for the rest of your life, I'm like, yeah, thank you. Instead, her inner torment is like that she's constantly thinking about what an asshole this guy is because he's taken away from her family. And he's like, yeah, but you're guilty of murder. If this is your jail sentence, that's pretty good. The guy, for no reason at all, has also said that he's helping your family and your family is cared for. So why exactly are you complaining? Your family that you hate because they are all assholes to you is being taken care of, so you don't have to worry about that and about the stupid promise you made your mother. You can just literally enjoy yourself in this magical kingdom. And yet she's constantly whining about it and trying to like construct like stupid ways to run away that she can't do. She's taken to this magical realm and she's so hungry and tired and sick that she's about to faint. And she's thinking, oh, I can run away, like, I could make it to the entrance and then try to escape from the estate. And it's like, you can't, like, you definitely can't. That's such a stupid idea. We're supposed to believe that she's an independent, strong female character who can take care of herself. But it's just not believable because she keeps making all these stupid judgments, just all these really inane, like, inner conversations with herself where it's obvious that what she's thinking is just not feasible. How has she survived for this long? That's my take on it so far. Oh yeah, also, in chapter 9 that I'm reading now, and for the past chapter as well, Feyre has concocting this plan where she has to convince Lucien to sway/convince Tamlane to let her go, or somehow make her atone for her murder in a different way so that she can go back to the human realm where she's miserable. Aside from the fact that I don't understand why she wants to go back in the first place. But the way that Tamlane is behaving towards her is completely civil, and he's like being super accommodating and trying to really like meet her halfway for no reason. So there's literally no reason that Sarah J. Maas has given us for Tamlane's being so nice. So it's completely unbelievable and doesn't make any sense. But he's doing it nonetheless. So whilst he's been really nice and like asking her if she wants to go for a walk or if she wants a tour of the house, and he's like trying to be just like a good host really, and instead she's constantly being like, oh no thanks, oh I'd prefer to be alone. She keeps being really rude to him, like, and belligerent for no reason. Like she literally has no ground to stand on for this behavior. For example, in this scene in the morning, she's been told that Lucien is probably at the stables getting ready to go on patrol on the border. So she wants to reach him at the stables and try and spend some time with him so that she can convince him to put in a good word with Tamlane. Then Tamlane goes to her and tells her, do you want to spend some time with me on a walk? Which surely would be the fastest way to convince him, because she can literally talk to him and make him see that, you know, she deserves to have like a second chance or whatever. She's been offered the chance. Do you want to spend some time with me, the person that you need to convince? She says, no, thank you, and hurries to go and meet with the guy that hates her, so that she can convince him to convince the other guy who instead is being completely nice to her. This is what I mean when I say that Feyre doesn't make any sense at all. So I am walking my dog, and this seemed like the perfect type of moment where I'm not really doing anything, so I can waste my time talking about A Corn of Thorn and Roses. There's a passage still here in chapter 9 where Feyre is confronted by the fact that she really can never go back to the human realm because Lucien tells her that there's no loophole that can go around the treaty. So she says something like, oh no, I cannot stay here forever. And I'm like, why not? Why can't you stay there forever, Feyre? What is the problem? I feel like if only Sarah J. Maas gave us some motivation for Feyre's like distrust and unwillingness to stay in this magical realm, then it would make more sense for Feyre to be constantly thinking about leaving. But as for now, she hasn't. The only thing she's given us so far is some weak exposition about how the fairies are not to be trusted and they are really evil. But she hasn't actually shown us any evilness coming from them. All that she's shown of the fairies so far is that they actually seem to be quite nice, even though they could have literally killed her. They haven't. They've been really nice to her, you know, they've given her food and clothing, and they're caring for their family. So on one side, we have total proof that the human world is crap and that Feyre's life in the human world was pretty crap. On the other side, we have evidence so far that the fairy realm is pretty nice, pretty comfy, easy gig, and yet she keeps wanting to leave. Why? Why, Feyre? Why do you want to leave? Oh, again, here, walking my dog and reflecting on what I read last night in A Court of Thorns and Roses. I had to take some screenshots because, of course, I couldn't take a video last night at, 12:30 or 1 in the morning when I was reading. The 3 screenshots I took are mostly to highlight this tendency that I see in Feyre, where Timeline says something perfectly okay, if not even nice, and she just has this really hypercritical, I don't know, just belligerent tone in her inner monologue. So for example, in this first quote, Timeline is telling her that it's not safe for her to go out at night because there are things that are prowling the fairy realm, like the bog. I don't know, to me that just sounds like a nice bit of warning and common sense. And instead she immediately thinks, yeah, because humans are defenseless, like babes, unlike fays who can defend themselves or whatever. And it's like, well, yeah, that's just a statement, isn't it? It's just a fact. And then there's this other passage where we find out that Feyre is illiterate, and Tamlane goes like, oh, so I guess that's why you had time to, become so good at other things. And she's like, oh, maybe he didn't realize that he gave me a compliment. And he's actually given her like lots of compliments throughout the book. Like, not loads of them, but like he's already told her like some nice stuff in the story, and he has never been like rude to her. So I don't understand why all of a sudden she's like, oh, he didn't realize that he gave me a sneaky compliment. And it's like, yeah, he's never not given you a compliment. Like, he's never gone out of his way to just be horrible or rude. And then there's this third little bit, which I think is the best one. Apparently there's been some disturbances in the fairy realm. There's some troubles. You can't really understand whether it's a natural disaster caused by magic being unstable, or if it's more to do with different like fairy tribes or, fairy societies sort of like fighting in kind of like a civil war. Like, it's not very clear. I don't know if it's, by design, or if Sarah J. Maas just couldn't be asked to properly shape up her world building and her universe. It's obvious that Tamlane has got some sort of internal torment about having to be a leader, but he doesn't want to be a leader, and he's got some issues on his plate, okay? These things preceded the arrival of Feyre in the fairy world, so she just arrived and she's finding herself in the mix of all this. So she overhears Tamlin and Lucien talking about this shit, and in her inner monologue she complains that they aren't telling her about it. They're just talking about it between themselves, and they're not making her aware or involved in the conversation. They didn't tell me because of a lack of trust, or ... because I was no one and nobody to them. Yeah, that's right. You're nobody to them. Like, they literally have met you like 4 days ago because you're a murderer and you killed one of their best friends. Why should they be telling you anything? So I have now read the entirety of A Court of Thorns and Roses. And I must say, I don't really remember it very well because I finished it like last night. It was like 2 in the morning, and I don't know, it's just kind of blurred right now. I must admit that the second half of the book was quite a page turner. So I must review my original statement that this book was boring, because it was incredibly boring, like the first half, and it doesn't make sense the whole of the book, but at least the second part of the book was quite entertaining. It was more of a guilty pleasure, like, that feeling like you really want to keep reading, and even though it's dumb as fuck, you just want to get more of it. I don't know if you guys get that. I get that quite a lot, where I'm just like, this product is managing to make my brain completely silent, and so I just want more of it. What did I think of A Court of Thorns and Roses after finishing it? So there was like a really good point, I feel like, right about like the middle of the book, where Feyre is going after the Suriel. And to be honest, that part with the Suriel was kind of interesting, like the lore around the Suriel. And I was like, oh, I kind of like this. Like, I want to get more of this. And then you don't get more of that. You just get a lot of Feyre and Tamlin walking around meadows and glens, like falling in love, whatever, and it's like, okay, boring. I was wrong, to be fair. Also, I thought that Lucien was gonna be the other guy in the love triangle that inevitably always happens in these kind of books. But then as soon as there's the spring orgy, whatever, and we meet this dark and tall stranger, I was like, okay, that's him. Yeah, that's the guy. So we meet Rysand, or Rysand, I don't know, Rysand? He's a dick. I mean, as soon as there's that scene where he asks for Feyre's real name and she gives the name of this girl that we never meet before. And again, it's just like this thing that happens where Sarah J. Maas doesn't introduce anything up until the moment where they're actually mentioned, like, in the story. Wouldn't it have been nicer if we had gotten like a glimpse of this Claire Bedor before Feyre gives her name to Rhysand? That would have been quite nice, I think, if we got how Feyre only has like one friend, or at least, you know, one girl who's kind of nice to her in the village, and so that's the first name that pops into her head. She gives that name and then that girl gets killed, and you know. Also, I've been telling this story to my partner when we're having like breakfast or lunch, when I told him there's this guy Lucien who's really against Feyre for some reason, like he's just been a little bit of a prick towards her, and he was like, oh, but maybe it's because he was Andras' boyfriend. Andras is the guy who Feyre killed when he was in wolf shape. Yeah, that would have been nice, actually. That would have been a nice way to, you know, include something that wasn't just like complete and constant heterosexuality in these books, but nope. 80% of the book has gone by. Feyre and Tamlin have consummated the relationship. They are officially in love with each other, and he tells her, you know, I love you, but I have to send you away because this is just the storyline for Beauty and the Beast, the Disney movie, right? As soon as the girl is in love with the guy and the guy loves the girl, then the Beast has to send her away because he's afraid that she's gonna be unhappy / tortured or whatever from these she that we don't know who she is. For the whole of the book, at this point, we've had these tidbits that there's this war going on, and what the Suriel said, there's this other high lord / like king, fairy king from another country. They're really anti-human and they really want to get all human like into slavery again because that's where humans belong, basically. There's this one great deceiver and somehow stole the power from the fairy lords, like the high lords. And I'm like, okay, fine. But then we don't get any more tidbits. So we just know that there's like this one woman, that fairy lady, who's the big bad, but we don't know anything more about it. So Tamlin sends Feyre away. And so Feyre goes. She's like, okay, bye. She goes back to her village, where now there's a mansion because Tamlin took such good care of her family that now they are like super rich. And also he glamored them, and so now they don't remember anything apart from Nesta, who for some reason, because she's like really angry or whatever, like she's really stubborn, so she didn't get glamored for some reason. Again, don't ask me how the magic system works. Don't look for, you know, for reasons for why things work a certain way. Now, for some reason, she's also okay with Feyre. She was like a bitch to her up until the moment where she left, but now she's kind of okay with her and like they become fast friends. Is there any type of character development that makes a lick of sense in this? No, there isn't, but who cares? They spend a couple of weeks just being rich and enjoying their time there, and then all of a sudden Bedors are killed, the family of the girl that Feyre mentioned as her own name to Rhysand. Of course, Feyre is like, shit, maybe something, you know, something's not quite right. So she decides to go back and she arrives at the mansion and, you know, there's been some sort of violence there and everything is abandoned and there's nobody there apart from Alice, of course, the loyal servant, and Alice just dumps a 10-page exposition on us. I'm not joking. It's literally 10 pages of exposition. Basically, it turns out that everything that we've thought so far, everything that Sarah J. Maas has told us so far, was bullshit. Actually, there's no blight. The reason why all of the people in the spring court had to wear masks was because of this lady called Amarantha. She's like really, really cruel. She wanted Tamlin to become her consort, but he was like, no, So she just cursed them all and cursed him specifically, saying that if he couldn't get a human girl who had killed a fairy with hatred in her heart to fall in love with him within 49 years, then she would have taken them all under the mountain. That's a very specific curse, lady. What I find profoundly wrong about this exposition dump is that it's okay, you know, if you have a plot twist and all of a sudden it's like, oh, maybe Tamlin wasn't like that nice. Maybe he was actually like manipulating Feyre because, you know, he actually brought her to the mansion just because he was hoping that she would fall in love with him, but then he's a nice guy. But kind of like in a rom-com, you know, when there's like a basic lie at the start of the relationship, but then the people fall in love for real, and so, you know, blah, 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 they just fall in love and end up together, like, happy forever after. And that's fine, but you can't do that if you haven't given the reader any hint that that might happen. And that's just bad writing, isn't it? There could have been like so many ways for her to just disseminate this information and make us understand that, you know, maybe that was a lie that Tamlin was telling. Just build up these plot twists so that, you know, some readers can actually guess that it's gonna happen, or at least that, you know, that something is going to happen. It was unexpected, mostly because there was like absolutely no build-up for the big plot twist to actually happen. Also, the pacing from then onwards just completely switches. It goes from like sexy fairy tale with furries to soft porn, dungeon, revenge tale. Feyre, under the mountain, going to claim Tamlin back to save everybody, and then she just has to stay there for 3 months doing all these like tasks. When she arrives, Amarantha is like, yeah, okay, so for no reason, instead of killing you right now, I'm gonna give you 3 chances to get back Tamlin. And if you solve these tasks, then you can free him and free everybody in the Spring Court. Or you can solve this really easy riddle that, of course, Feyre can't solve because she's a moron. She's been paraded around every evening and debased and humiliated and, you know, made to dance with wearing basically nothing on. It's just this kind of like soft porn court of horrors. I just hate it when writers take something sexualized and decided that's the best way to make a character feel humiliated. That's just so basic for character development. I mean, you could just do so much more with it. In the end, you know, she solves all the things and they end up happily ever after. And I don't know. That was very odd. The last 20% of the book was like just completely different book. Also, I mean, it was just drawing from so many other franchises and books and movies, like the scene where she kills the worm, like the first task. It's basically just the court of Jabba the Hutt and killing the beast in the cell while all the court is watching. Also, it gave you like labyrinth vibes, this kind of like court under the mountain. Of course, Feyre gets resurrected as High Fae as well, which is kind of like, you know, the vampire thing being remade. At least it happens in the first book, so we're spared her being a human for like 3 more books and then becoming a vampire or, you know, a fae, whatever, in the 4th book. I'd say this book was a waste of time. That was actually quite good fun. Am I going to read A Court of Mist and Fury, which is number 2 in the series? Of course I am. I am actually listening to it already. Got the audiobook so that I can work and listen to it. I must say, listening to it is actually worse than reading it, because at least when I was reading this, I was skim reading. Instead, listening to it, I have to listen to the whole thing. So it's gonna take hours and hours. I'm gonna prolong my pain. It's gonna be an interesting experience. I forgot to do a sign-off for this video, so here I am again in the future. This is a memo who has actually read all 3 books in the series, and I'm currently reading the 4th book. I actually had to check that because I couldn't remember the title. I'm currently reading A Court of Silver Flames, and since Feyre is not the main character in this book, I'm actually quite enjoying it. But yeah, I mean, if you guys want me to do a fan art of A Court of Silver Flames or reviews about the Sarah J. Maas books, just let me know in the comments below. See you guys, and have a good one.